Hello, hello, hello. Good evening, good evening, good evening, everybody. You are listening to the Beauty in Us Radio right here on Awesome Guide Radio. I'm your host, Nelson E. Brown, and I want to thank you all for tuning in to another show. And I want to thank you all for, again, showing your support each and every week and with each and every broadcast that takes place. Now, it's still Black History Month, but I have a very special guest this evening. So this evening, we're going to be speaking to Mr. David Marshall. He is an adoptive father, a single adoptive father who has established a nonprofit organization and a show called Journey to Josiah. Mr. David holds a Bachelor's of Arts degree from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, which is the school I'm attending. So go Retrievers, in vocal performance. And he I asked him, I reached out to him, and I wanted him to be a part of my broadcast because I wanted to have another conversation with you all about adoption. But I also wanted to have a conversation with you all in the presence of a single adoptive father who has chosen Adoptions Together as his placement agency. Now, for those of you all who are new or who may not remember, we had Miss Claire Beeman, the domestic infant program social worker for Adoptions Together here on our broadcast and on this platform about a month ago, talking about her experience working with Adoptions Together as a social worker for the domestic infant program. So if you all did not get an opportunity to watch that broadcast, I encourage you all to go back and revisit that whenever you have spare time or whenever it's feasible for you. But this evening, we're going to be speaking to Mr. David Marshall, who started his journey as a single adoptive father in April of 2017 when he adopted a 2-week-old baby boy named Josiah. And he is going to talk about his experience working with Adoptions Together this evening, and he's also going to speak to us about his journey as a single adoptive father. And he's going to, just educate us and help us learn about what that experience is like being a single adoptive father as we celebrate adoptive children, as we acknowledge birth parents, as we acknowledge adoptive parents, and as we talk about foster care adoption, domestic infant adoption, international adoption. I mean, we're just celebrating adoptive children and families this evening. So we're going to be doing that for the entire hour. So he's going to join us in about 10 to 15 minutes. But first, I wanted to start off with some Black History Month trivia for you guys. So again, feel free to leave your comments below in the comment section below and tell me what the answer is once you have an opportunity to think about it and do your research, because I know people are going to Google it if they don't know. So I have two Black historical figures to talk about for the beginning of the show this evening. And I'm going to present it as a trivia question, and I'll reveal the answer at the end of the show. So my first iconic Black figure, she was an American-born French entertainer, a civil rights activist, and a French resistance agent. Her career was centered primarily in Europe, mostly in her adopted France. She was the first Black woman to star in a major motion picture, the 1927 silent film Siren of the Tropics, directed by Mario Malpass and Henry Etiavant. And during her early career, she was among the most celebrated performers to headline the revenues in Paris. Her performance in 1927 caused a sensation in the city. Her costume, consisting of only a short skirt of artificial bananas and a beaded necklace, became an iconic image and a symbol both of the Jazz Age and the Roaring Twenties. She was celebrated by artists and intellectuals of the era, who variously dubbed her the Black Venus, the Black Pearl, the Bronze Venus, and the Creole Goddess. She was born in St. Louis, Missouri. She renounced her U.S. citizenship and became a French national after her marriage to French industrialist Jean Lion in 1936, and she raised her children in France. So again, this is a little bit about her. This is a Black historical figure. It's going to be one man, one woman. So I encourage you all to do your research and dig deep. She refused to perform for segregated audiences in the United States and is noted for her contributions to the civil rights movement. In 1968, she was offered unofficial leadership in the movement in the United States by Coretta Scott King following Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination. And after thinking it over, she declined the offer out of concern for the welfare of her children. But on November 30th, 2021, she entered the Pantheon in Paris, the first Black woman to receive one of the highest honors in France, and as her resting place is to remain there, she will be installed in the Vault 13 of the crypt in her home country of France. So again, this is a little trivia, Black History Month trivia. So that's figure number 1. So again, until the end of Black History Month, I'm going to be sharing with you all 2 historical figures, Black figures, 1 man and 1 woman. So that was the female. Now, I would like for you all to listen in for the second one. Now, I think the second one's going to be a little bit more a little easier, because I think that you all are much more familiar with him, but you also may be familiar with her, but just listen up closely. This Black historical figure, he was an American professional baseball player who became the first African American to play in Major League Baseball in the modern era. He broke the baseball color line when he started at first base for the Brooklyn Dodgers on April 15th, 1947. And when the Dodgers signed him, it heralded the end of racial segregation in the professional baseball league that had relegated Black players to the Negro leagues, quote unquote, since the 1880s. He was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1962. And his character, his use of nonviolence, and his talent challenged the traditional basis of segregation that had then marked many other aspects of American life. And he influenced the culture and contributed significantly to the civil rights movement as well, just as our heroic figure, our lady figure. He also was the first Black television analyst in MLB and the first Black vice president of a major American corporation. And in the 1960s, he helped establish the Freedom National Bank, an African-American owned financial institution based in Harlem, New York. And after his death in 1972, he was I can't even get it out, awarded the Congressional Gold Medal and Presidential Medal of Freedom in recognition of his achievements on and off the field. So again, these are 2 Black trivia questions. Well, 2 questions. This is a little Black History Month trivia for you guys. So again, feel free to leave in the comment section down below your answer to this question. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Adoptions Together. And again, if you all didn't watch my last interview last month with Ms. Claire Beeman, the social worker for the Domestic Infant Program at Adoptions Together, I encourage you all to go back and watch that and listen to that so you can educate yourself on that process. But I wanted to just speak a little bit about what adoptive families look like. I wanted to speak to you all about what Adoption Together does, because again, Ms. Beeman definitely gave us the 411 and gave us a lot of information about the Domestic Infant Program. So she gave us a lot of information about adopting infants and what that looks like. And even on their website, adoptionstogether.org, it says that every year we help hundreds of women faced with the difficult decision of whether to place their newborns for adoption. When infant adoption is chosen, we help birth parents choose the best adoptive family for their child from the perspective of adoptive parents who are working with us. So she spoke to us about that process last month, and she gave us a lot of great information about what that process entails and how she works with both the adoptive families and the birth families in the process. But again, when we speak to Mr. David Marshall in about 5 minutes, a handful of minutes, he'll talk to us about that journey, because he is a single adoptive father who is raising a son. So he's a boy dad, and he's been doing it for the past 5 years. He started his journey in April of 2017 when his son was 2 weeks old. And last year in March, it'll be a year in a minute, he started Journey to Josiah, his nonprofit organization and show to bring awareness and to celebrate adoptive children and adoptive families, and to acknowledge birth families as well, and birth parents as well. So again, I want to ask you guys, what do adoptive families mean to you? what does that mean to you? If you've ever grown up in foster care, what was that like for you? I encourage you all to just leave your comments down below as we continue to unpack this conversation. And this year, I know we're still in the first quarter of 2022, but I wanted to have an opportunity to speak to you all about more family oriented topics like this, because as you all know, I made the decision to grow my family this way. I revealed that to you all last fall. But again, I've been working with a lot of adoptive agencies, social workers, and even single adoptive parents, fathers in particular, since I want to embark on that same journey. And since I'm working towards that, I've been educating myself, I've been reading books, and I've been speaking to people who've gone through the process and who know what it's like. So, again, when we talk about adoptions together, we're going to talk to Mr. David Marshall about his journey. Um, he actually started his career out um, as a music educator in the Archdiocese of Baltimore. And so he worked for the Baltimore City Public School System, and then he moved to New York to pursue his career as an opera star. And he did that for a decent amount of time, and then he worked several other jobs, and then he had an opportunity to again become an adoptive dad to a 2 week old baby boy named Josiah. So he was able to live his life and he was able to build a career before he became a single adoptive father and before he decided to settle down and embark on that journey. So we're going to talk to him about what his journey was like being an opera star and what his journey has been like being a single adoptive father and what it's like not running a nonprofit organization. But again, I want you all to just think about it. What does an adoptive family look like to you? What does it mean to you? And for my listeners who've grown up in the foster care system, or if you know people who've grown up in the foster care system, or people who have their adoptive families and who do know their birth families, I want you all to talk about that experience or at least think about it. Tell me what comes to mind when you think about it. I mean, because I think that when we have conversations about adoptive families and birth families, we often think about um, how the children are affected in the process. How much love can we really surround them with? Because the overall objective, the overall purpose of establishing a healthy relationship between birth families and adoptive families is to make sure that we are showering our children with the most love, the unconditional love that they need and that they desire so that they can grow into amazing young adults, amazing young men, amazing young women. So again, I just want you all to think about that because I know that the experience is different from everyone, for everyone. And I know that everyone's journey is not the same. I know that, of course, you know, everybody has challenges. Everyone has obstacles to face. Everyone has bumps in the road. But I think that all of us handle all of those obstacles differently. I think that all of us really, really need to understand what that's like. And so, without further ado, I would like to introduce Mr. David D. Marshall to the show. He is the CEO and co-founder, well, the CEO and founder of Journey to Josiah, and he is also, an opera star. And like I said before, when I introduced you guys to him, and when I gave you all an opportunity to to listen to a little bit of his bio, he is also a UMBC graduate of 2003, right?
That's correct.
Yes, so 2003. So and I'm attending UMBC right now. So he's an UMBC graduate, and he has his bachelor's of arts and master's in vocal performance. So he is an expert singer. He is gifted in many areas. But Mr. David, thank you again for taking time out to talk about your journey.As a single adoptive father. And again, a shout out to Miss Claire Beeman for making this connection happen. She's the one that actually referred me to you because I was looking for other single adoptive fathers who looked like me and who have already been through that experience in terms of what it's like adopting a child for the first time, a newborn for the first time. So before you tell us a little bit about Journey to Josiah and what your journey has been like as a single adoptive father so far. Could you tell us a little bit about what your life was like before that? So if you go back to the very beginning. Um,
To the very beginning. Well, I'm
yes.
old. You really want to go back that far?
Yeah, well, could you tell us a little bit about like your career in terms of how what inspired you to start Journey to Josiah, but a little bit about your life before becoming a single adoptive father. I know
Yeah.
that you pursued a career as an opera singer
Hmm.
and you were a music teacher and
Hmm.
you had an opportunity to do a wide variety of things before um, started this journey. So could you tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so life really has been a journey. So journey to Josiah was another part of the journey. So I would describe my life as a journey. Thank you. First, thank you for having me, and thank you for this work that you're doing. It's a most impressive work, and I'm excited about your perspective journey. Um, so yes, a bit about my journey prior to Journey to Josiah. As you said, um, I do have my degrees in vocal performance. So, yes, I am a trained opera singer, and I did do that work full time for some years. But even prior to that, I was a music teacher in the Archdiocese of Baltimore. And then I transitioned from the Archdiocese of Baltimore and I taught in Baltimore City Public Schools for some years. And I've taught from pre K 4 up to grade 11. So I've taught the gamut of young promising artists, and that was truly a privilege for me. And then after that, after I taught for some years, then I moved to New York. I lived there for 4 years and performed full time for 4 years and I had an amazing experience. New York is such a loving and embracing city. While many people would see it as just the city of hustle and bustle, while it is a faster paced city, it is very much a loving and embracing city. I had the opportunity to meet some wonderful artists who became amazing friends of mine. And so I did have a career on the opera stage, on the recital stage, on the concert stage. And it's important to note that I had that career with some wonderful Black opera singers. And we don't get to often celebrate people of color on the opera stage, but that is who I had the opportunity to have that career with, and some of whom are on the Metropolitan Opera stage today. So that's another thing to celebrate. Now, I didn't make it to the Metropolitan Opera stage, but many of my colleagues are currently on that stage right now. Um, Thereafter, I moved back here to Maryland and taught again, and then I actually transitioned from the classroom to my family company, which is Marshall Jr. Incorporated. And what is interesting about it is it does play a bit in history in Baltimore County, Maryland, as it is now a 70-year-old refuse removal company. So some people say, well, what is refuse removal? Well, the not so glamorous term is it is trash. It is a trash removal company in Baltimore County, Maryland. It is the second formed Black-owned trash removal company in Baltimore County, Maryland. It now sits as the oldest of the Black-owned refuse removal companies in Baltimore County, Maryland. For a time, it was the largest, but now it still sits as the oldest of the Black-owned refuse removal companies in Baltimore County, Maryland. So I sat for 4 years as the CEO of that company when my father retired. Um, and then I made a huge leap of faith, just a huge leap. And I just walked away. And, the pandemic, so many people just were like, just made some changes. And that was a change. But during that time, I was able to do a lot of great work within that company and expanding its work, not really just in that, I mean, it's obvious work there, but really in the reentry process and in helping those who were formerly incarcerated to find work, to help in their training. Because it is not just necessary for them to have work, but for people in the reentry population to have proper training in ways of resume writing, interview skills, and to have some polish to be able to move out of that industry, but to be able to seek other employment. So I did that and won a Henrietta Lacks Business Owner of the Year award, which was a tremendous honor there. So I did make my mark in that industry as well. And so then, like I said, I made a huge leap of faith last year, as it were, and founded what is now Journey to Josiah. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yes, and like I said before, you were able to do so many amazing things before you even established Journey to Josiah, and you were able to, again, like you said, leave your mark in so many different areas between being an educator and between being an opera star, and even with being a part of your dad's company. You were able to serve in many different capacities. You were able to, again, use your gifts in order to serve others and not just fulfill your own life with what you wanted, but you were also able to meet amazing people in the process and develop those relationships and long-term connections. So, so what now? When we talk about your experience working with adoptions together, Miss Claire Beeman from the Domestic Infant Program was on with us on the show last month, and she talked about her work with adoptions together as a social worker. Now, you've worked with adoptions together, and that's what led you to your baby boy,
Yes.
Josiah. So could you tell us a little bit about what the experience was like working with adoptions together? Because she gave us the 411 in terms of what it's like from a social worker
Hmm.
standpoint, working with birth families and adoptive families, or birth parents and adoptive parents in the process. But since you're a single adoptive father, adoptive parent who has gone through adoptions together, could you tell us a little bit about what that process was like? Because I think people need to hear it from an adoptive parent's perspective. So could you tell us a little bit about what that experience was like, and how does it feel to be a boy dad?
Adoptions together. Well, let me tell you first how I came to adoptions together. It is very rare that one has the fortune, the rare blessing of having multiple people in their life that are adoptive parents, and I have multiple people that are personal friends and family who are adoptive parents. Two close to me actually adopted their children from adoptions together, decades actually before I got Josiah. So I actually spoke to them and talked to them about their adoption process. And both of them, who actually are not connected to each other, both told me amazing things about adoptions together. So with that, I will tell your audience that I didn't do a lot of the research that a lot of people would do, because there's a lot of research that goes into choosing an adoption agency. So immediately I was like, okay, well, let me look at this adoptions together. And so when I went on that website, I immediately felt at home, because it is important that your audience knows that when you look at an adoption agency and you look at the website, you should look to see that your family structure is represented on that website. And I saw my family structure, me, people that look like me, and everything that I represent, everything that I am, represented on that website. And so with that, I went to an information session and was immediately, I felt at home. And so from the I guess client perspective, I found Adoptions Together to be a very warm and inviting agency, very accommodating, very understanding, because this is a very emotional process, very tedious process, very tedious. There's a lot involved in an adoption process, that causes one to have to go deep into their own personal lives, into uncomfortable spaces sometimes, because you feel like someone is really digging in. People are like, why do I have to go through so much, and why do they have to know so much? But it really does involve an agency needing to know that a child is in the best possible loving home. But Adoptions Together really help to take away a lot of what you would think is too personal, I guess you would say. Um, So I had a wonderful experience. When I began to have those anxious moments, I had but to reach out to my post placement social worker, um, and I called her. I wanted to go in and speak. Wasn't a big issue. I had the access to go in and talk. There were adoptive parent waiting adoptive parent groups to go to, so we were all in the same boat together, expressing our anxieties together. There were single parent adoptive groups where they would really literally have outings, and we would go to dinner, and that social worker would be there, um, and some of us are still connected to this day, and of course we all have our children now. They're all around the same age, and actually one of them, we get together with our sons, and we have play dates. And to be a boy dad, well, I grew up with all brothers, um, and it's funny actually. I think God has a sense of humor because I wasn't your typical boy. I didn't jump all off of things. I didn't break things. I just wasn't a rambunctious boy, and he is a real boy. I don't know what I was. I don't think I was a real boy, but I have a real boy who does real boy things. He plays in dirt. Uh, he breaks things. He rolls and tumbles, and so it's fun, and a lot of people, a lot of my close friends get all of their chuckles because they're like, oh, well, look at you with this real boy. He loves sports. I'm not athletic, but he's pushed me into spaces because we get out in the backyard, and I've taught him to play soccer. I'm not an athlete, but I taught him he plays well. I taught him to play baseball. He can hit a ball. I couldn't hit a ball, but I pitch a ball, he hits it out of the yard, and he loves it because I have to go and get it out of the woods. I don't want to be in the woods. I'm afraid of what could be in the woods. But you know, it's it's a privilege, it's an honor, it's the joy of my life to be a boy dad. And I didn't pick the gender. Whatever God had for me is what I wanted. And so I have this rambunctious Josiah who will be 5 next month. And what can I say? Life couldn't be better. He pushes some buttons, but would I change it? No.
I mean, yes. I mean, but it's great that you have this experience because again, but like you talk about it now, but these are the things that you're going to remember as he gets older. So you're going to remember these moments, when he breaks
Yeah.
things or when he, plays in dirt. Like you're going to remember the stuff, when
And I
he's
gotta remind him.
yes, yes.
And
So
I'm gonna
it'll
send him a
remind
bill for all of the broken things. Yeah.
yes, yes, but yeah, but when you talk about this experience, I know that when Miss Claire Beeman, when she was on the show, she talked about how the waiting process was the most challenging part for a lot of adoptive families and a lot of adoptive parents. So because the home study, getting through the home study, is not as difficult as being a part of the waiting pool with all of the other adoptive parents and all of the other adoptive families. So could you tell us a little bit about that process? Because she's talked about it from a social worker
Yes.
standpoint, but you're talking about it from an adoptive parent standpoint. Could you educate us about how important it is to, like we talked about before, how to enjoy your life while you wait for that call that you were waiting for since the very beginning of the process?
An amazing question because that is the most challenging part. Um, I actually am getting ready to release some tips videos on my YouTube channel about the how to pick an adoption agency, and one of them is navigating the wait. And something you said is really actually one of the things that I actually said, and that is to continue to live. Um, and so some of the things that I did, one of them was I actually decorated the nursery. Now, I said I did not pick a gender, so I did create a gender neutral nursery. Now, that is something that not everyone can do, because for some people, that could create a bit of anxiety to walk past a nursery. Because I actually waited a year and a half for that call, and it can take up to 2 years, and depending on situations and your specifications. Um, it could be longer than that, but an agency will generally tell you it. It's plan on about a 2-year wait. But like I said, it was a year and a half for me of a wait. But I decorated the nursery because I believe in living in anticipation. It's about manifestation. And I knew that I was going to be a dad. And actually, going back to that visit I had with the post placement social worker, she said to me, in easing my anxiety, your baby is on the way. Your baby's just not here yet, but your baby is on the way. And that was just that God moment for me because, so much, we hear the line, delay is not denial. And so, because I was in that wait, and our minds play tricks on us in that wait, we think it's just never going to happen. But when God promises you something, it's going to come to pass. So it's just a matter of just being patient in that wait. So while I was in that wait and I knew it was going to happen, I decorated that nursery and I made it a magical place. I love Disney. So it was all Disney. I love Disney World. I still love it at 42 years old. I am an old child. So that was one of the things. And I would go into it and I just envisioned that myself and my baby in that nursery. Um, and another thing I did in that time is in that living was I still traveled. I didn't. Some people get stuck because they're like, well, what if I get that call and I'm out of the country or wherever you like to travel? Well, I don't know what to say if you're out of the country. I think that they're not going to just send your baby off someplace because there are, like Josiah was in, oh, I'm going to kick myself. There's a name for this. They're not respite. Oh my goodness. And I had his family, his first family on my show. Now this is horrible. Lord forgive me for this. It's something equivalent to respite. The name will come to me. But there is kind of a care that a child is in prior to them coming to you.
Is it
So
called interim care?
thank you. Thank you. So
Okay.
see how educated you are on this. So yes, he was with an interim care family until I got him. So, if you are out of the country or on vacation when you get that magical call, the baby will be in interim care. They're not going to just send the baby away. You will not lose your baby. So, you continue to live and you do those things because it helps to lessen the anxiety. I say in that video, your phone will be pinned to your hip because when I got the call, I was actually at work. I was teaching and my phone was on my desk on vibrate. And I saw my post placement social worker, her first name is Colby. And I saw that name pop up and I knew she wasn't calling me for coffee. And I had a fifth grade music class in my room. So it was the point of, am I going to be professional and continue to go on with my lesson with my fifth graders? Or am I just going to run away from these children because I know they got a baby for me? So another little story there, but at the same time, I tell everybody, continue to go about your everyday life and know that your baby is on the way. So I decorated the nursery and I continue to live. So whatever living looks like for you, you will check your phone, you will check email. Don't let it consume you because it is an emotional roller coaster. It really is. But I always say to people, know that, especially people of faith, know that what God has promised you, it will come to pass. He is not a man that, or I don't want to be gender specific all the time with this, but God is not going to go back on His promises to you. So live in anticipation. Hopefully that answers that.
Yes, yes, it does. And it kind of leads into my next question about like what your show is all about. But before we jump into the show, because I've watched several episodes of the first season and I really enjoyed listening to so many adoptive families and so many people who've been a part of the this community and people who've had open hearts and open minds about this. And I've enjoyed the first season, so I can't wait until the second season comes for your show. But before we jump into that, I wanted to talk a little bit about what it looks like for adoptive families and birth families to set up the post placement contact. So, in other words, open and closed adoptions. Now, I know even when she spoke about it on our show last month, she talked about how most of the adoptions with adoptions together are open. So could you tell us a little bit about your personal experience with that? Because like like we had talked about before, I'm already familiar. I was a little bit familiar prior to doing my research and speaking to so many agencies, social workers, and people who've been a part of the process and who've experienced this. Because I told you before, my mom, she didn't get the opportunity to have an open adoption when she was
Yes.
growing up. And I'm not going to put her on blast and tell her age, but it happened a long time ago,
Yeah.
and they didn't have access to
Mhm.
all of the resources and the support groups and people now. What is it like having an open adoption with adoptions together? I mean, because I know that when people make these decisions, when birth parents and adoptive parents, when they make these decisions, they have to think about what's best for the little boy or girl that they're raising, and that they want to raise and bring up in a way. So could you tell us a little bit about that, your personal experience with that?
So a lot of that decision really is based upon the um, the birth parent and where they are with it. We always have to be very mindful that um, this is a process that is extremely emotional for a birth parent. Many people have misconceptions that in an adoption process that it's a birth parent that or parents that are just don't want the responsibility, but there are circumstances, and birth parents, I feel, can be vilified and unjustly so. Um, I personally wanted an open adoption because I wanted Josiah to be able to have access because I operate on what I believe is best for children. And we do, studies have shown, and I will say Adoptions Together also advocates for open adoptions um, because we want, or not necessarily open, let me not say that, but openness in terms of their stories and all of that because children should always know their own story and where they are from and who they are um, but I I wanted an open adoption so that Josiah would be able to have access to his birth family, to know exactly who he is and all of that. He's young yet, so he doesn't even fully understand, even though he hears me use the word. And they encourage that at Adoption Together. They do so much great training to help us as adoptive parents along this journey, and they don't leave us. But with that said, birth parents a lot of the time they kind of dictate that because again as I said they're the ones who have this emotional journey and this emotional space that they have to navigate, and some of them it's just too difficult and they need to be able to just kind of let go completely. And so sometimes they will be the ones to say it needs to be closed, meaning there is absolutely no communication whatsoever, no access, nothing. Some of them will say open to a degree, meaning, just some picture exchanges, some emails here and there. Some of them want a bit more openness where there is some communication and, some visits. Adoptions Together will facilitate it as needed. They have a portal there that you can email through, so you don't have to exchange phone numbers, and so that it's very very safe for everyone, and that everybody can be very very comfortable. And they actually, with that portal, what happens is messages are actually basically intercepted, and and they make sure that they are, for lack of a better term, appropriate, so that they're not diving too much into each other's personal lives because everything must really just be about the child. And we don't want anyone to, talking about if sometimes maybe the birth parent may go too much maybe into a personal relationship. I'm not with the adoptive parent, but into their own personal life when really we don't need to be in that space. Um, or maybe the adoptive family may have, we don't know. Nonetheless, Adoptions Together makes sure that it is all centered around the child. Now there can become a time where everyone has become very, very comfortable, and you can exchange numbers, and that was facilitated for me through Adoptions Together. So in terms of Josiah, we were at a space almost crazily early where it was just like, you know what, we are so comfortable with one another. We had a bond like instantly, and so I called and said, is it possible for his birth parents to have my phone number? And we can just make these visits and all this. And they were like, you know what? You all have an uncommonly close relationship. Sure. And we'll facilitate that gladly. And so they did. But Adoptions Together, they will facilitate and make sure that everything is in a safe and, you know, great space. So hopefully that answered that for you.
Yes, it did answer my question about the difference between an open and closed adoption. And like I said before, I'm glad that these options are available now because, like I had shared with you, when we had spoken for the first time, I was kind of already familiar with how this process worked because my mom grew up with the same foster family,
Hmm.
her entire life, but she didn't have the opportunity to have an open adoption, and
Hmm.
so she was very, very. She talks to me all the time about how growing up it was very, very difficult for her to be in touch with who she was as a young lady, and how she was able to grow beyond that once she found out and and learn from that, and just in terms of just connecting the dots, because an open adoption has so many benefits, but like you said, you still want to respect the birth parents wishes because it's not about the adults at all. This is still about it's still about what's best for the child, and like you said, the birth parents wishes are important too, and like you said, there are so many misconceptions about the roles that everybody plays in this process. So like I said, I'm glad that you're on here talking about this experience because people need to understand that. And my mom even now, but now that she knows, she feels a lot more comfortable with who she is and a lot more confident about how she grew into a lady and how she's matured into the woman she is today. And she's even talked about how, like, even with just finding out about her birth family, like knowing all of the health related problems that run through the family, learning about the history behind who she is and how she came about, um, and it's just there are so many things, there are so many factors that play a part into having an open adoption. But like you said, you still have to respect the birth parents wishes, so if they choose to have a closed adoption, it's their choice. But like when I had shared my desire to embark on this journey with my mom, like she was very thrilled about it, and she was even happy about me, not only choosing the journey but having an open adoption too, because that's something that she didn't get to have, and
Yes.
that's something that she always wished that she would have had, so that she could have been much more confident about herself, and she could have, felt secure about who she was. So it's amazing. And one thing I also wanted to note was that you're a single adoptive father because unfortunately a lot of people are under the misconception that you have to have a partner or a spouse in order to pursue this journey. So could you tell us a little bit about what it's like being a single person adopting? Because I know that that process is different, of course, versus someone who's married or who has a significant other. So could you tell us a little bit about that and why it's important for people to not um, not overlook singles when they pursue this journey?
You know, it's interesting. I don't have much to compare it to, given that obviously I went into the process single, never having been married. Um, it was not tedious for me in any way because Adoptions Together, one, we live in, I will say, Maryland is a very liberal state. Um, not all states are liberal states that will allow for single adoption. I am an openly gay man, so not all will allow for that either. Um, so that's one thing we should recognize, that Maryland is different in that way. Adoptions Together is also very open in that way. So when I say look at the adoption website to make sure that your family structure and who you are is best represented, that's a lot of what I mean. Um, it was not. It really was. There was no barrier there. Because one, when people make birth plans, when birth parents make birth plans at Adoptions Together, they know. all of the family structures that would be represented in terms of adoptive parents, potential adoptive parents. So ultimately, it rests with um, the birth parent. And so if they're uncomfortable with potential families and what those would look like there, then they wouldn't make a birth plan and adoptions together all together. Now I can't speak to the other agencies, but that really wasn't a factor. Although in my own mind during wait, that was something that I worried about, but it wasn't a factor. So it wasn't a taxing thing for me. It was interesting because when I finally went public about it, a lot of my own opera singer colleagues and other colleagues, particularly single gay men, were like, I didn't know it was legal. And I was like, I didn't ever think it was an issue of legality as much as I thought, there could be some discriminatory practices. So it's a great question you ask, and that it should be noted that here in Maryland in particular, there are no discriminatory practices where this is concerned. If you want to adopt here, adopt. And you will not find yourself blocked because of it. Um, I did not find that to be an issue. I breezed through it.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's good. It's good that you had a positive experience because everybody's journey is different, and then some people, do feel it's important that everyone's represented, like you said.
Yes,
So the fact that Adoptions Together is very diverse and inclusive, that's what brings everybody together. Because again,
absolutely.
everybody's family structure is not going to look like, the mom, the dad, the son, the daughter, the cat, the dog, the white picket fence. Like
Right.
everybody's family structure doesn't look like that, and that's why people have to really just shift their mindset and get out of the frame of mind of thinking that that's what a family's supposed to look like all the time,
Absolutely.
because people think that anything outside of that is wrong, or it's not, quote unquote, the norm, the normal. So nothing is really considered normal. There are so many family structures out there. There are blended families, there are adopted families. So there's no fit. It doesn't fit into a box. That family structure doesn't fit into a box. So I
No.
encourage everybody to just remember that white house with the picket fence with a husband, wife, and two kids, and the dog and cat. That that's that's not everybody's reality. It's probably a very few people anyway, but but I just always want people to note that, because apparently people think that you have to be in a relationship in order to do this, or people will wonder, okay, why would you want to do it by yourself? Why would you want to go through this process alone, or don't you want to wait until you get married first? Like, I've already heard like some of those questions, and it's like, what does that have to do with this dream that I'm following? What does this have to do with this journey that I'm about to embark on?
Hmm.
So that's it's very important that you were able to explain that well. So my mom and I did tell my mom about the Citizens Review Board that you're a part of. So could you tell us a little bit about that? Because that's something that she's interested in being a part of when she does retire. And because again, she wants to, she adores children, so she wants to make an impact in the lives of children. And she feels like, since she's connected she feels like she'll be most connected to the Citizens Review Board because of her story. And she can definitely relate to a lot of the children who are in the foster care system,
Hmm.
and she can definitely work towards finding them a home. And she's really, really great at developing strong bonds with children. Like, she was very, very active in the school systems that I grew up in growing up. So she had a great reputation of being a great volunteer. So
Hmm.
she loves children. She loves educating children. She loves bonding with children. So I think that being a part of this board would definitely, give her a room to make an impact. So could you tell us a little bit about what that's like, and what led you to that work?
So the Citizen Review Board for Children, one, there are boards all over the United States of America. Now they may have different names, and so one should look through the Department of Social Services, I would say, in their different state, but I know that we're here in Maryland, so it is the Citizens Review Board for Children. And so, what it does is we help to recommend permanency for children in the foster care system. So we're and we also provide oversight to the for the to the Maryland Child Welfare System, or child yeah for the Maryland Child Welfare System, and so with our recommendations, those recommendations go to the juvenile court, and now ultimately they have the final say, but we are a very impactful board. Um, we listen to the full gamut of that child that is in the foster care system. So basically, when they entered, um, why they entered, um, and you know, should they be reunified? Now, within the foster care system, the thought is that reunification, meaning back with their birth parent, is the best, is the best for them, or with a relative. Unfortunately, sometimes it is not the best, and we have to recommend that they remain in their foster care, in that home that they're in, because we do have a wealth of amazing foster care parents that are so loving, but that is the major purpose of that board. I became involved really just this year. So I've only been on two boards, and that has all been a part of this journey to Josiah process and meeting people, because I did private adoption and I met a gentleman who uh, went through the foster care system and then became a part of this board himself. And he said, I think you would just be wonderful on this board. I'd never heard of the board. I'm not familiar. I was not, very knowledgeable of foster care, and so I wanted to be, and this is a major part of also my initiative with Journey to Josiah. So becoming a part of this board also gives me a lot of training about the foster care system. Within this board, there are many, many committees. There are the education committee, legislative committee, other committees that allow us also to give different voice. So while we are also making recommendations for permanency, we're also on committees that also give us a louder voice. And so I will be joining the legislative committee, which will give me a different voice in terms of potentially being able to go to Annapolis to to give louder voice to different things I see, in terms of the foster care system at large and how it can potentially be even better, we'll say. So that is the Citizens Review Board for Children. Anyone can be a part. If you have a heart for children and want to help them, I would recommend you looking into that board. All are welcome, and there are never too many people, because children's issues are everyone's issues.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Before we wrap up the last couple of minutes of the show, what advice would you give to someone like myself who's embarking on this journey, as a single adoptive father, or just in general as a single adoptive parent who is looking to, you know, fulfilling this dream and being a part of this journey? And what advice would you give to, people like my mom who are interested in giving back? Because my mom, like I told you before, she was part of the same family in the foster care system for her entire life, and she grew into a wonderful woman. She grew up with the same family her entire life, and she was very, very successful. She grew into a successful woman, and she wants the opportunity to give back. And she was thinking about ways to give back. And when I was telling her about the Citizens Review Board, that's something that she wanted to be a part of. Once she retired, and once she stopped her 9 to 5 job, and once she was able to move on to bigger and better things, she wants to make an impact. And I was telling her, like, I think that you would be awesome at this because you've been on the other side. You can relate to these children. You definitely know what's best for them. You've been involved in my life. You've been an active volunteer throughout the school system. You are the perfect match. like for this board. I was telling her, so like, so what advice would you give to people who are pursuing what I'm pursuing in terms of embarking on this journey as an adoptive parent, and what advice would you give to people um, who may be on one side or another? And what I mean by that is they may be a birth parent and they may be the adoptive parent, because this is all about providing that child, with unconditional love, no matter what. Um, so, what advice would you give to them, and how can people get in touch with you to learn more about your show and the work that you do?
So, in terms of advice, there are again boards like the Review Board that are boards that one should look into in terms of being able to help with permanency. I would also say that if you are a parent um, out there, get involved in your child's school. Be on PTA, be on a part of the PTA. That is a very necessary thing because being involved in your PTA, you're also being involved in the lives of other children and being a very, very useful voice within that school building, being a very impactful voice there. I would also say that you can get involved in my organization, Journey to Josiah Incorporated, and you can go to journeytojosiah.org to do that because as we are a growing organization, we are making a difference in the life of adoptive children because I'm consulting with parents, prospective parents who want to adopt, but I'm also working with those who want to foster. So I have people who are contacting me on a regular basis asking, well, how do I adopt? How do I become a foster care parent? We also, as you will see on the site, we have different initiatives. One that will be coming up, well, not coming soon, but in Christmas. And we will be partnering with a group home to celebrate Christmas with children in a group home because it is necessary that those children that are there, they don't they won't have a family to go and celebrate with for Christmas. So we want to make sure that we are celebrating with them to bring Christmas to them. So that's a way. Also, let me say this everyday children are vilified. The squeegee boys that people talk about on the corner, they're vilified. How do you get involved with them? You roll down your window, you give them $1 or two, you encourage them. That's another way you get involved. You don't pass a child on the street and you act as if they don't exist. You don't do that. You absolutely do not do that because you don't know what the circumstance is that put them there. That's another way that you get involved. So those are ways I would suggest. But again, visit us at journeyjosiah.org. Look at what we have going on. Um, you can contact me there. You can email me through that site. There is a if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of that site, you'll be able to see how you can contact me. And if you want to become involved, especially those like your mom who have been in the foster care system, I want to hear from you because there are different initiatives that I'll be building, and so voices like that will help in me building in my own programming for those in the foster care system. So I would love to hear from your mom and other voices like your mom as we are building in other programming there. And getting involved also would be helpful in donating to Journey to Josiah as well because we are a 501c3. And so I think that those are some ways, hopefully. CRBC, Children's PTA, Journey to Josiah, Squeegee Boys. I think we've given some ways that I see as impactful ways.
Yes, and those are a few of many ways. But
Mhm.
again, thank you again for being a part of this show, and thank you for providing us with so much information about this journey from an adoptive parent standpoint, and just thank you for your service in terms of just giving back and helping generations of children and families, with this process and with this journey, and just with this life, being a part of this community. It's opened up so many doors, and people are able to learn so much about what it's like. And having these open conversations like this is how we break through those stigmas of what all of the misconceptions are about this. So, again, thank you again for being a part of the show. And thank you again for the work that you do.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, so and you take care. I will definitely be in touch with you about getting my mom on your show so she could talk about her story, and so that she can inspire other women and other people who who have been through the same thing.
Absolutely. I look forward to it.
All right, thanks again. I'll
Thank
talk to you
you.
soon.
Take care. Bye bye.
Okay, so that wraps up another edition of the Beauty in Us Radio right here on Awesome God Radio. I want to let you all know that Josephine Baker and Jackie Robinson are the two answers to the Black History Month trivia for this week. Again, that's Josephine Baker and Jackie Robinson. So I hope you guys had a chance to look through that and learn more about it. But I hope this conversation has sparked up a conversation amongst your peers and amongst your family and friends and just people around you. I hope that you all were able to learn something from single adoptive father's perspective on what it's like to, raise a child as an adoptive parent and how to navigate through this process. I hope you guys, I hope that this encouraged you all to open up your hearts to children within your community and even around this world, because there are so many children who need to be adopted. There are so many children that need to be loved and feel loved. And there are so many children who need to call home a home. So again, I encourage you all to again go back and watch the last show from last month with Miss Claire Beeman, from Adoptions Together, as we talked about this from a social worker standpoint, working in the domestic infant program at Adoptions Together. Next week on the Beauty in Us Radio, right here on Awesome God Radio, from 6 to 7 p.m., we will have Mr. James Hill with us to talk about his work as an award-winning author in the book publishing industry. And he will talk to us about the work that he does in the book publishing industry and how he's managed to establish a career as an author and how he's been able to um, produce Black literature from a different lens. And we're going to have a conversation about Black literature as well. So I encourage you all to stay safe. I encourage you all to stay healthy. And I encourage you all to continue to be the best person, the best people that you could be. I thank you all again for tuning in to every single show, every single week. I hope that these shows continue to inspire you and uplift you during these challenging times. And I encourage you all to stay prayerful and to stay safe and to, just be blessed in everything that you invest your time, your energy, and your life into. So take care, and I will see you all next week. And again, make an appointment to meet me back here at 6 p.m. on February 22nd, 2022. Make sure you subscribe to us through all of our social media channels. Make sure that you head on over to awesomegodradio.com to learn more about the work that we do in our community as radio personalities. And follow me on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and all of the other social media sites at Nelson Brown and at Nelson E. Brown. Take care, and I will see you all next week. Bye.